The rain hammered the chapel windows like fists of regret, but Luke Harlan didn't hear it over the shattering crack of his fiancée's voice. "They can't do this to us, Jonathan, after everything?" Jonathan's words hung in the air, raw and ragged, as he clutched the crumpled rejection letter from the Willow Creek Inn, his knuckles white against the faded blue envelope. In that instant, the world narrowed to the glint of betrayal in his eyes, a storm fiercer than the one outside, pulling Luke under like the undertow of a forgotten promise. Luke had always believed in signs, from the way the autumn leaves in Asheville, North Carolina, turned the Blue Ridge Mountains into a canvas of fire and gold, to the serendipitous meeting at that dive bar in Durham, where he and Jonathan first locked eyes over cheap whiskey and shared dreams of escaping the South's sticky grip. But this felt like a cosmic joke, a middle finger from the universe dressed up as bureaucratic cruelty. The Willow Creek Inn, that quaint Victorian relic perched on the edge of the Smokies, had been the dream spot for their wedding. Not just any wedding. Their wedding, after 5 years of stolen weekends, whispered "I love yous" in the dead of night, and navigating the minefield of coming out in a town where "bless your heart" could cut deeper than a knife. It started with a phone call, innocuous as a summer breeze. Luke was elbow-deep in lesson plans for his 8th grade history class at Asheville High, the kind where he'd weave tales of the Underground Railroad to wide-eyed kids who reminded him too much of the boy he'd been: scrawny, bookish, hiding crushes on the quarterback behind dog-eared copies of The Great Gatsby. His phone buzzed on the cluttered desk, Jonathan's name lighting up the screen like a beacon. "Hey, babe," Luke said, his voice pitching up with that involuntary lilt he got whenever Jonathan called from the road. Jonathan was a freelance photographer, chasing light and stories across the eastern seaboard. His latest gig a spread on Appalachian folk artists for Southern living. "Guess what?" Jonathan's tone was electric, the kind that made Luke's stomach flip like it had that first night. "I just talked to the innkeeper at Willow Creek. They confirmed the date, June 15th, next year. And get this, there's a note in the reservation system from your grandmother. Says she booked it 20 years ago, back when you were still in diapers. For my grandson's wedding to the man of his dreams. It reads, can you believe it? Grandma Harlan was a goddamn prophet." Luke laughed, a sound that bubbled up from his chest like champagne, even as his eyes stung. Eleanor Harlan had been gone a decade now, taken by a quiet heart attack in her rocking chair on the porch of the family cabin, mid-sentence about the fireflies dancing over the creek. She'd been the rock of their sprawling, fractured clan. Widow to a moonshiner who'd drunk himself into an early grave. Mother to 4 boys who scattered like buckshot after high school. But to Luke, she was magic. The one who'd slipped him quarters for the arcade, taught him to fry okra just right, and, when he was 16 and trembling after confessing his first kiss with a boy from the swim team, pulled him into a hug that smelled of lavender and said, "Baby, love's the only thing worth fighting for. The rest is just noise." That reservation? It was her final gift, unearthed like buried treasure when Luke and Jonathan started scouting venues. They'd found it tucked in a ledger during a casual inquiry. The ink faded but the words bold. Eleanor Harlan, reserving Willow Creek Inn's grand suite for grandson Luke's wedding. Date TBD, but market for true love. The inn's owner back then, old Mr. Hargrove, had chuckled over the phone, honoring it without question. "Folks like your grandma don't make requests, they make legacies," he'd said. Now, 11 months out, with invitations half-printed and suits tailored, the dream curdled. The letter arrived certified mail, stamped with the inn's embossed logo. A willow tree weeping over a creek bed. Luke had slid it open that morning, expecting confirmations, not this gut punch. "Dear Mr. Harlan and Mr. Reyes, it is with profound regret that we must inform you. The new management, under a conservative trust installed after Hargrove's passing, had revised their policy. No same-sex ceremonies. To preserve the traditional sanctity of the venue," it droned, citing some vague appeal to community values. Jonathan, who'd driven through the night from a shoot in Charleston, had arrived just in time to read it aloud, his voice breaking on the last line, "Your deposit will be refunded in full." The rain outside the tiny craftsman bungalow they'd bought together 2 years back, peeling paint and all, mirrored the flood inside Luke. He paced the living room, Birkenstocks slapping against the hardwood floors scarred by generations of renters. Posters of Frida Kahlo and Harvey Milk stared down from the walls, silent witnesses to their sanctuary. Jonathan slumped on the sagging couch, the letter a crumpled flag of surrender in his lap. At 32, Jonathan Reyes was a vision of quiet intensity. Olive skin from his Puerto Rican roots, dark curls that Luke loved to tangle his fingers in, and hazel eyes that could shift from stormy seas to sunlit harbors in a heartbeat. He'd grown up in the Bronx, dodging gang tags and his father's expectations of manly pursuits, only to find his lens in a community center darkroom. Luke, fair-haired and freckled from too many hikes in the mountains, was his anchor, the soft Georgia drawl that soothed his city's sharp edges. "We fight this," Luke said finally, stopping to kneel before Jonathan, taking his hands. They were calloused from lugging camera gear, warm against Luke's perpetually cold fingers. "Grandma didn't book that room for nothing. It's ours by blood and promise." Jonathan's laugh was bitter, edged with the exhaustion of too many battles. "Blood? They don't give a damn about that. This is North Carolina, Luke. The wedding equality cake we got in 2015? They're still picking the crumbs off the floor." He pulled Luke up, their foreheads touching, breaths mingling in the charged space between. "But yeah, we fight. For her. For us." That night, as the storm raged on, they lay tangled in sheets that smelled of salt and pine soap, Jonathan's head on Luke's chest, listening to the steady thrum of his heart. Whispers turned to plans. Calls to lawyers, emails to local activists, a petition that might go viral if they played it right. But beneath the strategy, fear gnawed. A serpent in the garden they'd cultivated so carefully. What if this broke them? What if the world, once again, proved too heavy for their love? The next morning dawned brittle and clear, the mountains shrouded in fog like a bride's veil. Luke brewed coffee strong enough to wake the dead, while Jonathan scrolled through his phone, drafting a post for his photography blog. "Look at this," he said, tilting the screen. A grainy photo from the inn's archives. Grandma Eleanor, young and radiant in a sundress, arm in arm with Hargrove at a long-ago hoedown. She believed in that place. We owe her more than tears. By noon, they'd rallied the troops. First stop, the family cabin. A 40-minute drive up winding roads flanked by rhododendrons heavy with dew. The Harlan homestead was a weathered A-frame, its tin roof patched with duct tape, overlooking a valley where wild turkeys roamed like ghosts. Luke's Aunt Maeve met them at the door, her silver hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun, flour-dusted apron tied over jeans that had seen better decades. At 68, she was the steel spine of the Harlan line. Divorced twice, ran a bait-and-tackle shop that doubled as a gossip hub, and the only relative who'd shown up to Luke's coming-out barbecue with a six-pack and a proud-as-punch nephew. She enveloped them in hugs that smelled of cornbread and gun oil, then ushered them to the kitchen table scarred by knife marks from filleting trout. "Heard about the inn," she said without preamble, sliding mugs of chicory brew across the oak. "Bunch of fools up there now, bought it with oil money from Texas. Think they're saving souls by banning love." Her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, flicked between them. "But Eleanor's word? That's gospel. She told me once, right before she passed, 'Maeve, that boy's gonna find his heart's match, and I'll have the spot ready.'" Jonathan leaned forward, elbows on the table. "We're thinking legal, maybe a discrimination suit. But we need stories, proof of what the inn meant to folks like us." Maeve nodded, rummaging in a drawer for her ancient Rolodex. "Got contacts. The mayor's sister-in-law's queer as a $3 bill. Owes me for that time I covered her shift when her girl's water broke at the diner. And Reverend Ellis down at Unity Church? He'll march with you shirtless if it comes to that." She paused, her gaze softening on Luke. "You look like her, you know? That fire in your eyes. Don't let 'em dim it." As they drove back, the sun breaking through like a benediction, Luke felt a spark reignite. Jonathan's hand found his on the gear shift, a silent vow. But doubt lingered, a shadow at the edges. Luke's phone buzzed, a text from his cousin Brody, the golden boy of the family, fresh from Vanderbilt Law with a corner office in Charlotte. Heard the news. Tough break. But maybe it's a sign? Traditional wedding could mend fences with the folks. Luke's thumb hovered, then deleted it. Brody had always been the bridge to their conservative kin, the one who smiled through family Thanksgivings while Luke bit his tongue. But bridges could burn. That evening, they hosted a war council in their bungalow's backyard, string lights twinkling against the encroaching dusk. Neighbors trickled in. Sarah from the bookstore, with her wife and their adopted labradoodle. Tomas, Jonathan's old college buddy turned barista, nursing a PBR and a grudge against Bible thumpers. They passed around the letter like contraband, voices rising in a chorus of outrage. #Willow Creek Wedding, Sarah decreed, her fingers flying over her phone. By midnight, the post had 50 shares, comments flooding in with hearts and fists. In bed later, Jonathan traced the freckles across Luke's shoulder like constellations. "We're not alone," he murmured, lips brushing skin. "That's her gift too, reminding us love's a mob, not a solo act." Luke turned, capturing his mouth in a kiss that tasted of hope and hops. "To us," he whispered, "and to fighting dirty if we have to." But as sleep claimed them, Luke dreamed of the inn. Not as it was, but as Grandma had seen it. Doors flung wide, laughter echoing off beams carved with lovers' initials. A place where promises weren't policed but celebrated. Waking to Jonathan's soft snores, he clung to that vision, steeling for the battles ahead. Little did he know, the first betrayal was already in motion, coiled like a rattler in the underbrush of trust. The petition launched like a bottle rocket at a county fair, exploding across social media with the force of pent-up fury. By week's end, Willow Creek Wedding trended locally, racking up thousands of signatures from Asheville's Rainbow Coalition, hikers in Patagonia vests, baristas with sleeve tattoos, even a few straight allies who'd tasted the inn's blackberry cobbler at fundraisers. Luke and Jonathan became accidental activists, their faces pixelated on news feeds. Luke's earnest smile beside Jonathan's brooding intensity, the rejection letter blurred but its sting crystal clear. Reporters from the Asheville Citizen-Times camped out on their porch, microphones thrust like olive branches laced with poison. "It's not just about us," Luke told a wide-eyed intern from NPR's local affiliate, the words tumbling out as naturally as gospel hymns. They sat on the bungalow's glider, the air thick with the scent of damp earth from last night's shower. "This inn was my grandmother's love letter to the future. She booked it in '04 when gay marriage was a pipe dream. Now, some suit in a boardroom says we don't fit the picture? That's not tradition. That's tyranny with a side of sweet tea." Jonathan, snapping candids from the sidelines, caught the moment. Luke's jaw set, sunlight gilding his hair like a halo, the mountains a rugged backdrop to his quiet rage. That photo went viral too, captioned "The Fight for Eleanor's Promise." Offers poured in, pro bono lawyers from Lambda Legal, a venue scout from a swanky Charleston B&B promising rainbows and refunds. But Luke held firm. "We want Willow Creek," he said in every interview, voice steady as the creek it overlooked. "Or we want the world to know why we can't have it." Behind the scenes, cracks spiderwebbed. Brody called again, this time with a conciliatory tone that grated like sandpaper. "Look, Luke, I get the optics, but suing a family trust? That's kin against kin. The new owners are cousins of Hargrove, good people, just traditional. Maybe negotiate a private ceremony. No fuss." "Private?" Luke echoed, phone pressed to his ear as he chopped onions for chili, the sting mirroring his eyes. Jonathan shot him a questioning look from the stove, where he stirred ground turkey with cumin-laced precision. "Brody, this isn't a backyard barbecue. It's our wedding. Grandma's legacy. You gonna tell her ghost to tone it down?" Pause, heavy as humidity. "I'm just saying, family's worth more than headlines. Dad's already fuming. Says you're embarrassing the name." Uncle Ray, Luke's father, was a retired mill worker turned deacon, his Bible thumping louder than his heart these days. The coming out had been a war of attrition. Silent treatments, tearful interventions, a fragile truce sealed over Christmas him last year. Luke's mom, soft-spoken Teresa, had baked their engagement pie, apple with a lattice heart, but even she whispered doubts about poking the bear. Hanging up, Luke slammed the knife down, the blade embedding in the cutting board. "Bastards playing both sides," he muttered. Jonathan crossed the kitchen in 2 strides, wrapping arms around him from behind, chin on his shoulder. "Brody's always been a weather vane," Jonathan said, nuzzling his neck. "Points where the wind blows safest. Forget him. We've got Maeve." And Maeve delivered. She stormed the next town hall like Sherman through Atlanta, her petition clipboard a shield, rallying a crowd of 50 queers and rednecks united in their love for the Smokies' hidden gems. "This ain't about politics," she bellowed into a megaphone that crackled like bacon grease. "It's about a promise kept. Eleanor's word is Harlan gold, worth more than any deed." Cheers erupted, fists pumping under the county seal. The mayor, a portly Democrat with a comb-over, promised an inquiry, his handshake slick with sweat. Emboldened, Luke and Jonathan drove to Willow Creek that afternoon, the inn materializing from the mist like a fairy tale haunt. It was picture-perfect Americana. White clapboard siding, gables peaked like church steeples, wraparound porch strung with wind chimes that tinkled mournfully. The creek burbled below, fringed with ferns, and in the distance, peaks layered like God's own quilt. But the "for private events only" sign by the gate twisted the knife. The new manager, a wiry man named Ellis Crow with a mustache like a broom bristle, met them in the foyer. The space was frozen in amber. Crystal chandeliers, velvet settees, walls papered in huntsmen and hounds. "Gentlemen," he drawled, extending a hand that Luke ignored. "Appreciate you coming, but the policy's ironclad. Board vote, 5-2. Can't undo it." Jonathan's camera hung from his neck like a talisman. "What about the reservation? It predates your policy. Legal binding." Crow's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Honor the deposit, not the date. Times change." He paused, glancing at a framed photo on the mantel, Hargrove with a fishing pole, grinning beside a younger Crow. "Look, I admire your persistence. But this place has history. Weddings for folks who've built this country, farmers, veterans. Traditional vows." Luke's blood boiled, visions of pitchforks dancing in his head. "My grandmother built this country too. Raised 4 sons alone, volunteered at the food bank till her hands shook. Her traditional was love without limits. You telling me that's not American enough?" The air thickened, Crow's mustache twitching. "It's not personal." But it was. Luke saw it in the flicker, the way Crow's gaze slid away, landing on a side table where Eleanor's faded reservation card lay, unearthed for this very confrontation. Jonathan snapped a photo then, the click echoing like a gunshot. Crow's face darkened. "No pictures. Public space." Jonathan shot back, unflinching. "Freedom of the press, remember?" They left with more questions than answers, the inn shrinking in the rearview like a bad memory. But on the drive home, Jonathan's hand in Luke's sparked something fierce. "That photo? Gold. Post it with the card. Let the internet do the rest." By evening, the image, Crow's scowl beside Eleanor's script, had 10K likes. Comments scorched. "Bigot's gonna bigot. Stand with love." But amid the firestorm, a private message pinged Jonathan's inbox. From an anonymous account. "You don't know the half. Ask Brody about the board vote. He's the swing." Luke stared at the screen, the words blurring. "No, he wouldn't." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "We ask." The call to Brody that night was a minefield. He answered on the 3rd ring, voice oily smooth. "'Cause saw the post." "Dramatic, huh? Cut the crap," Luke snapped, speakerphone on so Jonathan could hear the sleaze. "What's your play with the board?" Silence, then a sigh like exhaust. "Okay, fine. I advised them pro bono family discount. Told them to modernize policies, cover their asses legally. Didn't know it'd hit you like this." "You advised them to ban us?" Jonathan's voice was ice, cracking the line. "Not ban, clarify. Look, the trust was hemorrhaging cash post-Hargrove. Needed donors. Big ones, from the Bible Belt. Compromise for survival." "Survival on our backs," Luke whispered, the betrayal blooming cold in his chest. Brody, the cousin who'd shared comic books and creek swims, who'd toasted their engagement with to happy endings. Now this, a Judas in pinstripes. I'm sorry, Luke. Really. But family's about protection, not perfection. Let it go. I'll front the cash for a new spot. The line went dead, Luke's world tilting. He sank to the floor, back against the fridge, sobs racking him silent at first, then guttural. Jonathan knelt, gathering him close, rocking like a child. Hey, we're still standing. But the wound festered. Days blurred into a haze of interviews and ice cream binges. Ben and Jerry's lovesick for the future. Naturally, Maeve dropped by with moonshine and maps, plotting alternate venues. A meadow by the French Broad, a rooftop in town. Screw the inn, she growled. We'll make our own magic. Yet Luke couldn't shake the ache. Late one night, he slipped out to the porch, the mountains black silhouettes under a star-pocked sky. Jonathan found him there, bundled in a quilt Eleanor's hands had pieced. Talk to me, he urged, settling beside. It's like, she saw us coming, you know? Booked that room when gay kids like me were jumping off bridges. And now, it's poisoned. Tears tracked Luke's cheeks, hot as branding irons. Jonathan pulled him in, lips to temple. Then we unpoison it. Together. Their kiss started soft, a bomb, then deepened, hands roaming, breaths hitching, the quilt a tent against the chill. In the tangle of limbs and longing, Luke found anchor. Jonathan's body a map of devotion, every scar and curve a testament. They moved with the urgency of the betrayed, reclaiming power in gasps and grips, the night air alive with their symphony. Dawn found them spent, wrapped in each other, the first birdsong a fragile truce. But the message board lit up anew. A leak from an insider, detailing the board's donor list. Evangelical PACs funneled through Brody's firm. The backlash hit like a nor'easter. Boycotts called, reviews tanked. Crow issued a statement, mealy-mouthed, reviewing options. Luke's phone rang off the hook. Activists, reporters, even a producer from Dateline. In the chaos, a letter arrived, handwritten on linen paper. From Crow himself. Mr. Harlan, your grandmother's reservation moved me. Perhaps we can discuss. Privately, hope flickered, tentative as a match in wind. They met at a neutral diner off Highway 25. Formica tables sticky with syrup ghosts, the jukebox crooning Patsy Cline. Crow slid into the booth, looking smaller sans his innkeeper armor. Khakis rumpled, eyes ringed with fatigue. The pressure's mounting, he admitted over coffee black as sin. Donors pulling out. But it's more than that. Hargrove was my uncle. He was like your grandma. Saw things differently. Luke leaned in, pulse thundering. Then honor him. Honor her. A beat. Then Crow nodded, slow as molasses. One condition. No media circus. Quiet ceremony, invite only. We frame it as evolving traditions. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. And the policy? Under review. It wasn't victory, but it was a door cracked. They shook on it, hands clasping across the chasm. Driving back, euphoria buzzed. We did it, Luke hooped, punching the air. Jonathan grinned, wolfish. Round one. But betrayal's echo lingered. That night, over takeout Lo Mein, Luke confronted the ghost. A voicemail from Uncle Ray, voice gravelly with gin. Heard about Brody. Family sticks, son. Come home, talk it out. Before you drag us all under. Luke deleted it, pulling Jonathan close. Our family, he murmured. Right here. Yet as invitations went out, discreet, cream stock with gold-embossed willows, the serpent stirred anew. An anonymous tip to the local rag. Harlan cousin behind gay wedding ban. Brody's face splashed across front pages. His career a house of cards in the gale. The leak hit like a sucker punch at dawn. The Asheville Citizen-Times thumping onto porches with Brody's mug. Stiff-suited, tie askew. Under a headline screaming family betrayal. Lawyer cousin blocks gay wedding. Luke woke to Jonathan's curse from the kitchen. The coffee pot hissing like an accusation. It's everywhere, Jonathan said, thrusting the paper at him. The byline traced back to Crow's assistant, a closeted 20-something with a grudge and a conscience. Details spilled, emails from Brody's firm, advising risk mitigation via the No Queer Weddings clause. Donor lists redacted but damning. Luke's stomach churned, the words blurring into a Rorschach of rage. He sold us out for billable hours. Brody, who'd once bandaged his scraped knees after a bike crash, now the villain in newsprint. The phone erupted, texts from Maeve, that boy's always been yellow-bellied, calls from reporters, exclusive on the Rift. But the deepest cut, a voicemail from Teresa, Luke's mom, her southern lilt fractured. Baby, your uncle's fit to be tied. Brody's denying it all, but come for Sunday supper? We need to heal this. Jonathan brewed fresh coffee, strong and silent, his presence a bulwark. Don't go, he advised, handing over a mug etched with world's okayest husband. It's a trap. Guilt you into silence. But Luke couldn't shake the pull, the Harlan blood calling like a siren's song. One dinner. For Mom. Jonathan's nod was reluctant, eyes shadowed with the fear of fractures. Sunday arrived sweltering, the valley a steam bath where heat mirages danced off blacktop. The family manse, a sprawling rancher on the outskirts of Black Mountain, vinyl siding faded to Pepto pink, loomed like a monument to mediocrity. Uncle Ray manned the grill, tongs flipping burgers with the precision of a drill sergeant. His flannel shirt straining over a belly earned from too many Shoney's buffets. Aunt Linda fussed with potato salad, her perm a helmet of judgment, while cousins milled about, kids chasing fireflies early in the dusk. Brody arrived last, slinking in with a bottle of Boone's Farm like contrition in a screw cap. His eyes met Luke's across the picnic table, pleading hollow. "Cuz," he started, voice low under the sizzle of meat. "Save it." Luke cut in, fork spearing a deviled egg like an enemy. Jonathan sat beside him, a hand on his knee under the checkered cloth, grounding. The meal dragged, small talk a minefield. Weather? Too damn hot. Ball scores, go heels. The inn scandal skirted like a skunk at a garden party. Ray cleared his throat finally, napkin dabbing at sauce-streaked lips. "Luke, son, this mess, it's dividing us. Brody here's family. Mistakes happen. Mistakes." Jonathan's tone was velvet over steel. "Advising a ban on our wedding isn't a hoopsie. It's betrayal." Ray's face purpled, veins bulging like rivers on a map. "Watch your tone, boy. This ain't New York. It's God's country. Weddings are sacred, not parades." Teresa's hand fluttered to her throat, pearls clicking. "Ray, please." She turned to Luke, eyes wet as mountain streams. "I just want my boys whole." Eleanor wouldn't. Eleanor booked that room for love. Luke interrupted, voice rising like yeast. "Not caveats." "And Brody?" He twisted it for a paycheck. The table fell silent, forks hovering, kids' eyes wide. Brody shoved back his chair, the screech a banshee wail. "You think I wanted this? The firm's breathing down my neck. Big clients or I'm out. I tried to loop you in, Luke. Warn you off. Warn us." Luke stood, chest heaving. "You could have said no." Stood up. The words hung, heavy as humidity, the family fracturing before their eyes. Ray slammed a fist on the table, deviled eggs quivering. "Enough, out both of you, before you poison this home like you did the inn." Jonathan rose, pulling Luke with him, but not before Luke leaned in, voice a whisper for Brody alone. "Blood don't mean loyalty, cousin. Remember that." The drive back was a blur of taillights and tears, Luke's knuckles white on the wheel. Jonathan waited till they hit the county line before speaking. "You okay?" "No." Luke's laugh was jagged, but freer. "They chose sides. We choose us." That night, the bungalow became a bunker. They ignored the voicemails piling up. Ray's apoplectic rants, Teresa's pleas, Brody's sniveling excuses. Instead, they dove into wedding prep with defiant glee. Playlists heavy on Katie Lang and the Indigo Girls, vows scribbled on napkins stained with Merlot. Maeve crashed the party with a truckload of mason jars for centerpieces, her truck bed groaning under wildflowers pilfered from roadside ditches. "To hell with silver," she cackled, unloading. "We're going feral." As days ticked down to the rescheduled date, June 22nd, a week later, to dodge the media glare, Asheville buzzed. Protests swelled outside the inn. Rainbow flags snapping in the breeze, chants of "love is the tradition" echoing off the hills. Crow, cornered, issued a reversal. Willow Creek welcomes all expressions of commitment. But whispers swirled of sabotage, donors threatening lawsuits, Brody's firm filing injunctions on contractual breaches. The eve of the wedding dawned electric, thunderheads massing like uninvited guests. Luke and Jonathan escaped to the cabin, Maeve's domain now a whirlwind of tool and tension. She pressed a shoebox into Luke's hands, Eleanor's, labeled for the big day in her looping script. Inside, a pressed corsage of mountain laurel, yellowed photos of young love, and a letter. "Dearest Luke, if you're reading this, you've found your Jonathan, or someone who makes your heart sing like the whippoorwills at dusk. I booked Willow Creek because it's where dreams root deep, like the willows by the water. They bend, but don't break. Neither will you. Marry for joy, fight for truth. And remember, love's the only inheritance worth a damn. All my wild heart, Grandma." Luke's throat closed, the paper trembling. Jonathan read over his shoulder, voice thick. "She's there, in every bend." The ceremony setup was a labor of love. The veranda swept clean, arches draped in ivy and lanterns, the creek a silver ribbon below. Guests arrived in waves. Sarah and her wife with a cake tiered like the Smokies, Tomas hauling a cooler of craft IPAs, Reverend Ellis in a rainbow stole that clashed gloriously with his Birkenstocks. No family from Luke's side, save Maeve, who stood sentinel in a pantsuit sharp as a switchblade. As dusk painted the sky bruise purple, tension spiked. A caravan of trucks rumbled up the drive. Ray at the helm, Brody shotgun, faces thunderous. "They're here to stop it," Maeve hissed, blocking the path. "Called it sabotage." Luke's heart hammered, but Jonathan squeezed his hand. "Let 'em try." The confrontation erupted on the lawn. Ray bellowing about defiling sacred ground, Brody muttering legalese, Linda wringing her hands. Guests formed a human chain, voices rising in counterpoint. Then Teresa stepped forward, small but unyielding, a casserole dish as her shield. "Ray Harlan, you've blustered enough. This is my son's joy." She turned to Luke, arms open. "I'm here, baby. For you." The air shifted, Ray's bluster deflating like a punctured tire. He grumbled, retreated to the trucks, but Brody lingered, eyes downcast. I filed the papers to drop the injunction. It's yours. The inn." "I'm sorry." Luke searched his face, seeing the boy beneath the lawyer, the scared kid who'd shared secrets under quilt forts. "Sorry's the start," he said finally. "But trust? That's earned." Brody nodded, vanishing into the twilight. As stars pricked the canopy, the ceremony began. Luke waited at the arch, navy suit hugging his frame, boutonniere of laurel trembling against his lapel. Jonathan appeared, curls tamed, eyes locked on his like a compass to true north. Reverend Ellis's words wove through the hush. "Love is patient, fierce, unyielding. It bends the world to its will." Vows exchanged, Luke's voice cracking on. "You are my mountains, steady and wild." Jonathan's steady as shutter click. "In every frame, you're my light." Rings slid on, simple gold bands engraved bend. "Don't break." The kiss sealed it, soft at first, then deepening under applause that shook the leaves. But climax brewed in the afterglow. As cake sliced and toasts flowed, a figure emerged from the shadows. Crow, tie loosened, a bottle of Hargrove's private rye in hand. "Uncle would have loved this," he said, clinking glasses. Eleanor's got the last laugh. The night spun into revelry. Dances under lanterns to At Last. Maeve two-stepping with Tomas. Teresa swaying alone, tears glistening. Luke and Jonathan stole away to the creek bank, feet dangling in the chill flow, rings catching moonlight. "We made it," Jonathan whispered, head on Luke's shoulder. Luke smiled, Eleanor's letter tucked in his pocket like talisman. "We bent the world." Yet as fireworks, courtesy of Sarah's pyrotechnic girlfriend, bloomed overhead, a final shadow loomed. Brody's truck idled at the gate, headlights cutting the dark. He stepped out, envelope in hand. "One more thing," he called. "The trust's full deed, Eleanor's reservation, it overrides everything. You own the wedding rights, forever." Betrayal redeemed, in ink and inkling. Luke took it, nodding. "Come inside, cuz. Have cake." Brody hesitated, then crossed the threshold, the family mending one slice at a time. The morning after dawned with the gentle ache of happily ever after's prelude. Birdsong filtering through gauzy curtains. The creek's murmur a lullaby, Jonathan's arm heavy across Luke's waist like an anchor in dream-tossed seas. Willow Creek Inn, for that one enchanted night, had surrendered its ghosts. The veranda swept of old bigotries, the grand suite theirs alone, a four-poster bed vast as the promises they just voiced. Luke stirred first, tracing the curve of Jonathan's spine. The tattoo there. A compass rose inked during a rebellious spring break in Miami, now etched with the gravity of forever. "Mr. Reyes Harlan," he murmured, testing the hyphen like fine wine. Jonathan's eyes fluttered open, hazel depths lazy with sleep and sated love. "Sounds official, like we're about to audit the universe." They lingered in bed till noon, sheets tangled, laughter punctuating lazy explorations, fingers mapping familiar territories with the reverence of newlyweds. Breakfast arrived via room service. Fluffy biscuits, red-eye gravy, blackberries bursting on the tongue, a nod to the inn's Appalachian soul. Crow had left a note. "Congrats. Key to the wine cellars under the mat. Make it yours." They toasted with vintage Cabernet, the kind that stained lips purple and hearts bolder. But euphoria's edge sharpened with reality's return. Phones, silenced for the ceremony, buzzed back to life. Maeve's text, headlines everywhere. "Your folk heroes, boys." Links followed. CNN clip of the protest swell. The New York Times op-ed on Southern Love's quiet revolution. Even a Washington Post piece quoting Reverend Ellis. Eleanor's reservation wasn't just a booking. It was a blueprint for justice. The Willow Creek wedding hashtag had morphed into a movement. Petitions morphing into policy pushes for statewide protections. Jonathan scrolled, grinning. "We're accidental legends." But Luke's feed held shadows. Ray's number, unanswered. A group chat from estranged cousins exploding with passive-aggressive emojis. And then, the gut twist. An email from Brody, subject "one last thing." "Luke, deeds filed. In's wedding rights secured in your name. Eleanor's gift. Ironclad. But the trust's fighting dirty. Countersuit for defamation. My firm's lead on it. Resigned this morning. Need a job? Charlotte's got space for a real lawyer. Forgive me? Brody." Luke read it aloud, voice flat as the creek's polished stones. Jonathan set his fork down, gravy cooling untouched. "He's trying. But countersuit? That's low even for them." A knock interrupted. Teresa, unannounced, a Tupperware of leftovers in her arms. She looked smaller in the doorway, floral dress rumpled from the drive, but her smile held steel. "Heard you own the place now. Thought you'd need fuel for the fray." They ushered her in, awkwardness thawing over coffee. She perched on the settee, hands folding like prayer. "Raise, processing. Stayed home, Bible open to Proverbs. But me, I saw you two last night, glowing, like Eleanor on her wedding day." Tears welled, but she blinked them back. She'd be proud. "And I'm sorry for the silence before." Luke knelt, taking her hands, cool, calloused from years at the mill's front office. "Mom, you came. That's enough." Jonathan busied himself with plates, giving space, but his glance said, "We're in this." Teresa stayed till afternoon, stories spilling. Eleanor's secret poker nights with the ladies' auxiliary, her quiet funding of the local shelter. "She believed in second chances," she said finally. eyes on the reservation card framed by the bed. Like the one I owe you. She left with hugs and a promise. Supper soon. Neutral ground, maybe that vegan spot in town. The door clicked shut, leaving Luke adrift in fresh emotion. Did that happen? He laughed, turning to Jonathan. Your family's thawing. Miracles do exist. Jonathan pulled him close, but his phone vibrated. A Charleston number, his agent. Shoot in Seattle next week. Big spread, queer icons in the Pacific Northwest. You in? Luke hesitated, the pull of routine warring with this new gravity. Yeah, but first we claim our legacy. They spent the afternoon exploring the inn's hidden veins. The wine cellar, dusty racks groaning under bottles from Hargrove's heyday. The attic, trunks of lace and letters, ghosts whispering of loves long faded. Crow joined them, mustache twitching with unaccustomed mirth. Boards folding. He confided over a tour of the gardens, where heirloom roses bloomed defiant. Your story? It's rewriting our deed. First queer wedding gets a plaque. Dusk fell as they hiked the trail behind the inn, hands linked, the path Eleanor's favorite. Switchbacks climbing to a overlook where the range unfolded like a rumpled quilt. They spread a picnic. Cheese, figs, the rye nipped sparingly. Conversation meandered. Fears of fade. Dreams of kids. Adopted. Maybe, with Maeve as godaunt. The itch to document it all through Jonathan's lens. You're my muse, Jonathan said. Camera forgotten. Just them against the vista. Always were. Luke's retort died on a gasp. A rustle in the underbrush. Then Brody emerging. Suit traded for khakis. Face gaunt. Tracked your car. Please, hear me out. Jonathan tensed, but Luke waved him down. 5 minutes. Brody sank to a log, words tumbling. Quit for real this morning. Told the partners where to shove it. The countersuit? Dead in the water. But I need to make it right. For her. He nodded to the invisible Eleanor. Voice cracking. Grandma Harlan caught me once. Age 12. Kissing the neighbor boy behind the shed. Didn't judge. Said, secrets are heavy, Brody. Lighten up. I buried it. Buried you too when it suited. Luke's chest tightened. The boy in Brody mirroring his own buried pains. Why now? Because love's not a loophole. It's the law. Brody extended the envelope, not legal but a check. My savings. For the inn's renovations. Make it a haven for everyone. Jonathan eyed it warily, but Luke took it, folding it away. Keep your money. Work for it, pro bono for the shelter. Eleanor's style. Brody's nod was fervent, relief flooding his features. They walked back together, the trail less lonely, tentative bridges rebuilding under starlight. Back at the inn, the night unfolded in waves of reclamation. Guests had trickled in for the morning after brunch. Maeve with hangovers and hash browns. Sarah toasting with mimosas spiked with moonshine. Toasts turned testimonial. Tomas on found family, Ellis on faith's fluidity. Ray didn't appear, but a card arrived via courier. His scrawl, proud, despite myself. Invite open. As the sun climbed, Luke and Jonathan slipped away to the suite one last time. The bed unmade, petals scattered like confetti. Our first night as husbands, Jonathan murmured, backing Luke against the window, the mountains a witness below. Their lovemaking was slow, deliberate. A liturgy of touches, breaths sinking like tides. Jonathan's hands, sure and seeking, mapped the planes of Luke's body. The dip of his collarbone, the freckles like stars on his thighs, the pulse at his throat that raced under lips. Luke arched, whispering devotions, yours, always. As they moved in rhythm, the room filling with the sacred sounds of surrender. Climax crested like a peak, leaving them breathless, entwined, the world outside paling. Afternoon brought the plaque unveiling. A brass plate by the veranda doors, engraved Eleanor's promise. Where love bends the willow. Crow hammered it home, crowd cheering. Maeve pulled Luke aside after, eyes misty. She'd say you did good, kid. Real good. But humanism's arc bent toward complexity. That evening, over porch rockers and rye, News broke. The trust's final gambit. A public apology, but laced with clauses. Donors reinstated, policy evolved, to case by case. Victory, but Pyrrhic. It's progress, Jonathan said, feet propped on the rail. Luke nodded, head on his shoulder. And that's Eleanor's real gift, teaching us to bend, not break. Night deepened, fireflies winking like approbations. In the distance, the creek sang on, eternal. Months folded into the rhythm of reclaimed lives, the Willow Creek wetting a fulcrum tilting worlds toward light. Luke returned to Asheville High, his classroom alive with a new fervor. Lessons on Stonewall woven into civil rights units. Kids debating Obergefell with the fire of fledglings testing wings. Mr. Harlan, one girl asked, braids swinging as she raised her hand. If love's a revolution, what's our role? Luke paused, chalk dust on his slacks, Jonathan's ring a cool weight on his finger. Start by seeing each other, he said. Really seeing. Jonathan's Seattle shoot birthed a portfolio that shattered molds. Portraits of queer elders in flannel amid ferns. Their stories etched in laugh lines and faded tattoos. The Spread and Out magazine credited, my husband, Luke, for reminding me, every frame holds a fight. Back home, he hung one in the bungalow. A black and white of them on the overlook, foreheads touching, mountains humble behind. Our manifesto, he called it, kissing Luke under the glass. Family mended in fits and starts. Sunday suppers at the vegan cafe became ritual. Teresa experimenting with seitan ribs. Ray grumbling but lingering. His Bible swapped for the Velveteen Rabbit after Maeve's pointed gift. Brody showed up sporadically, sleeves rolled, volunteering at the shelter, sorting donations, his lawyer's polish softened by sweat. One night, over kale smoothies, he confessed to Luke, Eleanor's ghost haunts me good, says I'm redeemable. Luke clapped his shoulder. She was right about most things. The inn thrived under the dual stewardship. Crow handling ops, Luke and Jonathan curating events. First up, a commitment ceremony for a trans couple from Raleigh, the veranda aglow with lanterns and laughter. Then a vow renewal for Sarah and her wife, cake smeared in gleeful abandon. The plaque gleamed, touched by hands of all hues, Eleanor's promise etched into the ether. But drama's embers glowed. Fall brought a donor revolt, holdouts from the trust, filing a last-ditch suit claiming moral injury to the inn's heritage. Crow called in panic, they're gunning for the deed. Luke and Jonathan drove up through leaves of flame, the air crisp with wood smoke and worry. The hearing was a circus in the county courthouse, oak benches worn smooth by generations of reckonings. Brody, pro bono for them now, stood tall in a borrowed suit, arguing with the eloquence of atonement. This isn't heritage. It's hate cloaked in history. Eleanor Harlan reserved for love, not litmus tests. The judge, a silver-haired widow with a rainbow pin on her robe, nodded through depositions. Crow's tearful tribute to Uncle Hargrove, outed posthumously in attic letters. Maeve's fiery testimony on family legacies. Even Teresa's quiet plea. My son learned to love despite us. Let him teach the rest. The donors' council droned on, scripture quotes, slippery slopes, but the room tilted. Jonathan captured it all from the back. Lens a silent ally. When the gavel fell, case dismissed with prejudice. Cheers erupted, hugs rippling like aftershocks. Outside, under maples shedding crimson, Ray waited, awkward in his trucker cap. Heard the news. Good on ya. He extended a hand to Jonathan, first time, rough palm engulfing. Welcome to the madhouse, son. The after-party at the inn was cathartic. Fiddles wailing bluegrass remixed with EDM, moonshine flowing, bodies swaying under harvest moon. Luke and Jonathan danced till dawn, sweat slick and breathless, the floor creaking under feet that refused to tire. This, Luke gasped, spinning Jonathan out, is the high country. Winter blanketed the Smokies in hush, the bungalow a cocoon of Coco and Gilmore Girls marathons. They adopted a mutt from the shelter, Rufus, part hound, all heart, his wagging tail a metronome to their mornings. Plans percolated. A podcast on queer Southern stories, Jonathan's brainchild. A book of Eleanor's recipes, Luke's tribute, laced with annotations on love's ingredients. Spring unfurled with renewal's grace. The inn's first anniversary event. A Bend the Willow festival. Panels on allyship, drag brunches. A time capsule buried by the creek. Letters to future loves. Brody emceed, mic in hand, jokes landing lighter than his old alibis. Ray even spoke, voice gravel over gratitude. Lost my way once. Found it watching my boy shine. One evening, as fireflies reclaimed the valley, Luke and Jonathan hiked to Eleanor's overlook. Rufus bounded ahead, the deed framed, official, tucked in Luke's pack. They spread a blanket, picnic simple. Her cornbread, blackberries, rye. Think she's smiling? Jonathan asked, head in Luke's lap, stars wheeling above. Luke traced his jaw, ring glinting, beaming. We bent the world, all right? They made love there, under open sky. Slow, fervent. The earth cradling them as witness. Winds whispered approbation. The creeks song a hymn to endurance. Years later, with kids in tow, two boys, adopted from the system's fringes, Rufus gray-muzzled at their heels. The inn stood as beacon. Weddings weekly, policies paragons, Eleanor's plaque polished by tiny hands. Luke taught, Jonathan captured, family fractal but fierce. In quiet moments, Luke would pull out her letter, faded now, words eternal. Love's the only inheritance. They'd claimed it. Dramatic, emotional, romantic, raw, and in the bending, found unbreakable grace. The end? Not tragedy, not unalloyed triumph, but the humanistic heart. Lives woven from willows, resilient in storm.